Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 682 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our ninth book just came out. It's called From Letters to Leaders, The Legacy of Service. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, my speakers and I, we talk about all kinds of things, risk management. We talk about alcohol and drug abuse prevention. We talk about hazing prevention. We also talk about sexual assault prevention, and we're not talking about it enough. And today we have a brand new app that I think is going to help college students across America. And I can't wait for you to learn more about it. So let's just jump right into it. Attorney Nicolena Nino-Rosato has a unique and diverse background. She started her career in the district attorney's office while completing her master's degree for healthcare ethics and bioethics. So she understands all sides of a criminal case. She graduated Summa Cum Laude from Washington and Jefferson University in 2005. She earned her joint JD/MA at Duquesne University. And in 2008, Nicole went on to complete her residency program for her PhD at Duquesne University at Mercy Hospital. So, I mean, just absolutely incredible. And obviously, she's able to use all of these medical concepts whenever they come up in her cases. And we also have with us today a co-founder, Timothy Rosato, of an app, and the app is called the NotME App. So I can't wait for you to learn more about this new app. Welcome to the show, Nicole and Timothy.
Thank you so much for having us. We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah. It is fantastic. Anytime you have solutions for college students, you are welcome on the show at any time. I promise you that. Now, Nicole, I mean, I guess we can start with you because, you worked both as a criminal defense attorney. You also worked in a district attorney's office. What are some of the most common situations where college students unintentionally find themselves facing some very serious legal consequences?
Very serious legal consequences. Miscommunication. I cannot stress enough the value of communication. And today in our world, we are more and more removed from communication. And that becomes a really big problem, especially for college-age students who have cell phones and are very used to just being behind a screen and communicating that way in kind of a safe manner. But then when they get into a situation together, they have a hard time sometimes communicating face to face. And that's one of the reasons we created the app. But as a prosecutor, as a defense attorney, we see so many things that are unintentional. And if these college kids would just kind of open the border to communication, they wouldn't have nearly as many issues as they have. So I sat back and thought, okay, how do I solve this problem, right? I have a 19-year-old daughter. Getting her to communicate can be, an immeasurable kind of thing. So I really, I brought an idea to Tim and thought like, hey, there's an app for that, right? And that's what we came up with.
Yeah, you're so right. And I'm glad that you brought this app to Timothy. I think this is a fantastic idea. I also have a son who's 21. I have a daughter who's 19. And so they're both in college. And so, yeah, I mean, I certainly think about that lack of the communication skills can be lacking at times. I don't know if it's because of the pandemic. I don't know if it's because of the phones and they're just buried in it. And like for us, it would be totally normal to go to the bar as a college student and just sit like at the bar and have a conversation, right? Like this is what I want out of a relationship. What do you want out of a relationship? And just listen, right? And actually hear what the other person is saying, right? So I think, those things are kind of lost at times. And what's wild to me is that if you really want to have a successful relationship, it's all about communication. Like it's literally all that. If you have great communication skills, I'm telling you, that is incredibly sexy. I'm just putting it out there. That is like amazing, like over the moon. And it's almost so rare to find it today, on college campuses.
Well, and another huge problem we see is that, they're leaving the home for the first time.
Yeah.
And people can be very, very trusting. And so there are a lot of fraudulent issues too, as a defense attorney that I've seen, meaning a lot of them are on Tinder, Grindr, Bumble, all of these dating apps and whatnot. And sometimes they think they're meeting someone who says who they are, and they're not. For instance, last year, I had over 15 cases where a younger adult went on these dating apps, the college student adult, and found who they thought was an 18 or 19-year-old. The problem is 15, 16, 17-year-olds are also on these apps. And a lot of these big companies do not do age and ID verification, even though they can do it for pennies on the dollar, because they want to possibly indoctrinate people. They need users. They want people getting used to using these websites at 15, 16, 17. The problem is it's illegal for you to have a relationship with someone who is underage. And these, victims, and they are victims too. They're a victim of the system, but these victims take the stand and they say, checked a box that said I was 18, said I was 18, told the person I was 18, and did everything that an 18-year-old is allowed to do. And now the person, a mistake of age in so many instances is not a defense. So you have these college age kids now that are quote unquote hooking up with people that they wouldn't hook up with if they told them their real age, right? But they're on these apps. They feel safe because they've checked the box, but that's not a defense. And I have seen tons of those types of prosecutions. And it's very unfortunate for the victim as well as the person who's victimized, because I consider them both victims, but the law doesn't see it that way. And unfortunately, they're hoodwinked into having a relationship with someone that's not of age. And, when I was a kid, you'd go to Ocean City, Maryland, you go, wherever, and you would say, yeah, of course I'm 21. And you would fake an age. They're doing that. So you can't necessarily blame them. They're doing that on the dating apps. But then unfortunately, people are being prosecuted for that misunderstanding and that, fraudulent kind of identity. So our app also does age verification, which we consider to be a huge value to that as well.
That's a real problem. And we also see, even in, let's say, a fraternity party on a college campus, sometimes you will have people who are underage, 15, 16, 17 years old, getting in there somehow. And listen, I've seen students climb into parties through like back windows. Like I've seen it all. I'm just telling you, like this actually happens on campuses where
Yeah.
students are like shut out from anything social. So they're climbing into windows, doing whatever they need to do to get into that party because they know that they've got no social experience that night unless they're in that house some way, somehow. So I've actually seen that. But I mean, is the age verification, is that the inspiration behind the NotME app? And what problem were you hoping to solve?
So if Tim can take this one, yeah, but one of many.
Yeah.
It's multifaceted.
For me, the reason why I got involved was my wife actually owns a Pilates studio and she has several instructors. And one night in 21 or 22, a few of them came over and they were describing to me using Tinder, Bumble, all these dating apps. And they described the physical relationship that they're having. They would always wince and be like, yeah, I didn't want to do that. And logically, I'm always trying to solve problems. My first question is, then why'd you do it? And a lot of them would say, it's just easier to do it sometimes than to really disappoint. And they don't feel comfortable expressing what they truly wanted. So whenever Nicolena approached me and we kind of discussed this, I took a week to kind of ponder it. And I thought back to that specific instance and thought to myself, the system's kind of broken as we're diving into phones. Technology can be an enabler. Let's enable more enhanced communication. Let's try and get that so everybody understands the rules and the playing field of which they're standing on. And then also with that specific person, it's not a one size fits all. As you go into it, it's meant to protect your anonymity as well, because that's part of the ego that we're trying to protect as people are standing up in this new world and saying what they truly want.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, like, because I can communicate with somebody. So for me, I look at it and I'm like, man, why is this so hard? What are some healthy ways that students can communicate their boundaries in terms of dating, friendship, social settings without that uncomfortable feeling or feeling judged?
Yes. Well, and our app, that's the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with someone and says, I'd be interested in X, Y, and Z, but I'm way too uncomfortable to say Z. Like the benefit of knowing if those two agree to something, because how our app works, you get a QR code, it's specific with just that person. Then you get a list of things that you're interested in, and it can be anything from holding hands to 50 Shades of Gray and, S&M things, all
Yeah.
I'll leave it to your imagination.
Yeah.
And then you get to pick what you're interested in with that person. And you can pick everything. Now, your partner might only be picking, first base, if you will, right?
Mhm.
The app only shares what you two agree on.
Oh, wow.
And that way, if you don't agree on any, so you're not embarrassed,
Yeah.
right? So if you don't agree on anything, then see you later. And our app specifically says like, hey, better luck next time,
Yeah.
right? It literally comes up. It is not advised that you move forward. And the benefit of that is so many people in college, like, when we were first talking about like ads and whatnot, I was like, it would be great. A guy sitting at a table and a girl sitting at a table, and usually, typically, the bubble above his head, right? She's a knockout. I hope I get all the way, right? Or vice versa. I'm not trying to, say one versus the other.
Sure.
Or then the girl says, oh, he's Prince Charming. I hope we kiss and live happily ever after, and they never communicate about those two bubbles.
Right.
But our app comes in and now you have a solution without feeling uncomfortable. So if you know, okay, I'm a player, this ain't for her, right? And she's like, I'm looking for a long-term relationship. We didn't agree on anything, it takes a lot of the headache, the guesswork, the miscommunication, the misunderstandings that lead to criminal prosecutions out of it.
Yeah, I like that it automatically kind of matches up what you're comfortable with, and the rest of it we'll just leave
Yeah.
out, which is great. That saves the embarrassment, right? Like, I
Of
don't
course,
really
of
want
course.
to be embarrassed knowing that my partner knows that I have some strange fetish or whatever it is.
Exactly.
And so that helps without being judged. Can you talk about how this technology or just technology in general has changed the way that students communicate, if on your app or
Yeah.
even just in general, both positively and
Yeah.
also negatively? I'm sure there's
Sure.
pluses and minuses here.
Well, I think there's a time, obviously I've said my daughter's in college, so I do see the value in, I used to have to go to the library and actually look through the books. And as a lawyer, when I was in law school, I wasn't fortunate enough to have a laptop where you could look up case law. And I have associates now that can use an AI machine and literally give me a case in like 5 seconds, right? Something that used to take me hours. It is overwhelmingly valuable. There is not a doubt in my mind, but it can be used very irresponsibly.
Mhm.
And that's the issue that you run into time and time again. And you're putting these, mega devices into children's hands, or kids that are barely not children, right? 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds at school. And you're expecting them to have the savviness and the responsibility and the maturity that we have, right? Well, I would never do that. I would have been maybe not even the position I'm in if phones would have been available when I was a child, right? Some of the mistakes you made, the videoing. So those are kind of the negative parts too, is that everybody's on camera, everybody is everywhere, and they're not held to this responsibility of being able to communicate effectively.
Mhm.
There are keyboard warriors and people that say all kinds of terrible things. I mean, they have, reels and all this just based on comments that people feel safe enough to make behind a screen, right?
Mhm.
So because of all that, like, we take that and that inability to really have that conversation, and our technology is trying to break this barrier that technology's created, where we don't have to communicate anymore, right? So everybody's behind a screen, everybody feels safe. A lot of introverted kind of things now, a lot of anxiety comes from the social media and everything else. And our app is saying, okay, we understand that you might be less comfortable than your parents' generation or than the generation before them. But here, this is something to make you feel more comfortable with communicating. And that's why I think it really is so valuable.
And to truly empower,
And
right?
empowers.
Just empower them
Yeah.
with the decision making, be able to have a voice in it and not be afraid of using that.
Sure.
But ours, going back to what Nicolena said, to underscore the anonymity, trying to protect the ego a little bit, because this younger generation that's on the rise, a lot of them are a little sensitive around the topic. And what's more sensitive than talking about physical relationships,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. I do talk about sexual assault prevention on college campuses. I also talk about hazing prevention on college campuses, and alcohol seems to be this common denominator that is present many times in those particular cases. So, can you talk about the role of alcohol in clouding communication and
Or
decision making among these college students?
so, and that's, the funny part is when we started actually looking at the statistics, and we agree with you, alcohol unequivocally is a barrier to these communications. But it also, at a certain point when you're intoxicated or someone is getting intoxicated, not used to drinking, they can be more flirtatious. They can say things that they truly don't mean on social media, in these dating apps, on Facebook, Instagram. I'm going to not be able to name them all, but all of those things, right? And then when they're faced in person, it's like, put your money where your mouth is, right? And so that miscommunication comes up because it's like, well, you said A, B, C, and D when we were chatting, and you had a couple drinks and you were in your dorm room and lonely and whatnot. But now we're in this situation, and the assumption is they're cool with all of that. And they might not be, right? Because they might have over imbibed or whatever. And then that also leads to Title IX's criminal prosecutions and whatnot too, because one party truly believes, no, 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 you said you were cool with all of that. And they're like, well, no, I had, 17 Jaeger bombs, if that's still a thing. I don't know. Is that still a thing?
Yes,
It
it
is.
Okay. And so then I said, like, yeah, cool, no problem, and that inhibition. So, but then when you get into the real situation of it, it's like, no, 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 no. And this is a real way to say, all right, I'm not putting my money where my mouth was. I had too many to drink. I was too flirtatious, whatever it may be. This is really all I'm cool with. And if you're not all cool with it, we're fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And also, I mean, sometimes, people they think that they're okay with something and then suddenly something changes, right? Like I might be okay with maybe having a relationship with somebody and suddenly I find out, oh, they haven't showered in a week.
Yeah.
And now suddenly I'm not okay with this anymore,
Sure.
right? So I
Sure.
was okay with it, and then I found out that you didn't shower, so now I'm done, I'm
And
out.
this is an easy way to let people down too,
Mhm.
right? Because if you get that message that says you two are not vibing, right? You're like, and I think so many times people, we all want to think of ourselves. I mean, I truly think most people are good, and I think they end up into these situations because of miscommunication. And
Right.
they think, heck, I'm a rock star, like, whatever. But then they get the message, oh, we don't agree. And it's like, okay, fine. Like, we're just not into the same thing. It's not like a rejection, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, we're just not into the same things, and that's okay, right? And so
Yes.
we'll go our separate
Yes.
ways.
And
Now,
now you
earlier,
know.
Nicole, you used this term Title IX. Now, I know what Title IX is, but I'm sure
Sure.
there's a lot of college students out there that really don't understand what that is. Maybe
Yeah.
they know that there's a Title IX office on their campus, but what actually happens there, maybe they're not really sure. So, can you explain what is Title IX in a way that a college student can actually understand what it is, and what do they misunderstand about Title IX?
So I've represented Title IXs, my firm and we get a lot. There are very big universities in our area. So it is something that, for better or for worse, we've become very, very familiar with. Title IX started out specifically for athletes. And it was, for discrimination, typically for female athletes, but it also was for sexual assaults of people that fell victim to basically cases that the police were not prosecuting, but that the universities still needed to definitely address and, be responsible for. So because of a lot of legislation and whatnot, Title IX came. It has matured into it basically helps any student that feels they've been victimized by any sort of sexual conduct, sexual harassment, discrimination, any sort of harassment, quite frankly. Sometimes I get some that aren't even sex involved, but most of them have some sort of component of sexual assault or sexual harassment attached to it. And what happens is they go to their Title IX coordinators and they file like a report, like you would with any kind of policing body. And a lot of times these things are not being prosecuted, but it is a safe space, and it is the colleges being proactive to try to finesse the situation so that possibly both students can continue at the university and feel comfortable. Or if it's egregious enough, a student is expelled or asked to leave, or, told not to return to campus, depending. And it's a mini trial. Every university deals with it differently. So some people can have advisors, that would be me, and we can talk. At some of the universities, the advisors are not allowed to talk. We just sit there and, we can converse, but like questions can't be asked in the trial of the alleged accuser or the alleged perpetrator. And then you typically have like a mini trial in front of. Some universities have big boards, some just use one person that basically is there to act as like a mediator and hear the evidence. And then it's determined, and the standard is a preponderance of the evidence. So the criminal standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. That is not the case with the Title IX. It's a 51% likely that it happened standard. And so that's what Title IX does. But it is a fantastic, fantastic department. I honestly think it probably should be utilized more. I think that a lot of students are not really, they think, oh, I wasn't raped, so I can't go to Title IX. That's not the case. Any sort of like uncomfortable behavior by other students and whatnot, they're there to protect, help, sort out the story and really give people their quote unquote day in court under a Title IX hearing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clearing that up and putting that out there. I think that's very helpful for college students. Now, your product I think is great, and I think we have a really good match with the fraternity and sorority community, which is
We do
everybody
too.
who's listening to your voice right now. Because when we talk about the values of fraternity and sorority, I mean, we talk about respect. SAEs is the true gentleman. For Sigma Pi members, we talk about chivalry. So like we're really aligned in terms of our values as organizations, and I think the mission of the NotME app. So how can fraternities and sororities create these cultures where members feel safer in speaking up, asking questions, and just clarifying expectations in this relationship?
You want me to take it?
Yeah, look at that.
So with the fraternities and sororities, I've for fortunately or unfortunately, I have represented quite a few members in this whole miscommunication kind of genre or era that we're in. And they typical forums will talk about consent, and they will say, and they'll go into the fraternities and sororities, and they've asked me to speak too on these issues, just to say this is what consent is. And to touch on that too, when we started this, or when I started this, the standard was yes means yes, no means no. It has evolved into enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Like, so enthusiastic yes means enthusiastic yes. And we try to really get that across to the fraternity and sororities in these educational moments. And the reason we feel that the app is so imperative here is because I do believe they get the concept. I don't think any college student that you ask says, oh yeah, I want to hook up with somebody that's not really sure, right? Like no one is going to say that. At least 99.9% of the people I deal with are not going to say that. The problem becomes the miscommunication. They're in their phones, and like our app enforces what they're being taught, what we're going into the fraternities and sororities. Fraternity men, like you said, want to be chivalrous. They want to be good men. They don't want this reputation or this, to kind of like take over, because quite frankly, when these situations get out of control, it ruins lives. It not only ruins collegiate careers, but it ruins in perpetuity the rest of their life. And so that's why really educating the fraternities and sororities, which they're doing a good job at, is so imperative. But the step further from that is to say, here's the tool. I know this is what you want, but so many people come up and ask, like, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked by a college student, how do I fix this? Or how do I get past this? Or how do I utilize something? Like, what questions do I ask? And I'm like, funny, you should ask. I have an app. But it really is so imperative I think this is parents sending their kids to college in the fraternities and sororities with protection. That's what this is. This is saying, I know you're a good person. I want you to protect those values and ideals that I know that you want to protect. And this is going to be your opportunity to use something to make sure that you're both on the same page. If it were up to me, every high school graduate would download this app and take it to college with them.
That's fantastic. Now, Nicolena, I know you're the parents of a college freshman, so I'm wondering how has that changed the way that you think about campus culture,
Oh,
student safety?
yes. I'm terrified.
Yeah.
No, in all due candor, she is, and I might brag here for a minute, she is the most responsible, down to earth. She is a nerd like her mama. But I feel like even hearing the girls talk or the different friendships and stuff talk, you can tell that like they're not always on the same page, right? And you can just tell. And she is vocal. She is me. She has a voice.
Good.
So I am very happy about that. But even so many of her friends don't. Like I can hear them kind of like puppet things that say like, well, he's cute, but I don't know. And like, I guess I'll just make out with him. And it's like, no, no, no. Do you want to make out with him? And it is terrifying because, as a young woman, I know I put myself into situations that I was not comfortable with when I was their age, right? And I took a lot of personal responsibility for some of those decisions. And even in today's generation, I feel like, it's is it 85%? I don't want to misquote it, but we have a percentage on our website. It is an astronomical percentage of people between the ages of 18 and 35 who feel at one time that they've been sexually assaulted by someone they knew. 85%. And when we looked at the college numbers, it was something like 72%. And that's being reported. I can only imagine how many people haven't reported it. And so that in and of itself is terrifying to me. And that's, again, why this app is so valuable, because it prevents someone from being a victim. It really does. I unequivocally believe in it. I think that my daughter and all her friends would benefit from it. And, people come back and say, my daughter goes to a very nice Christian school, and, she has a mindset which is fantastic. However, even people who are not wanting to move to certain levels in a relationship sexually, if you will, they still definitely benefit from this app, because now you're saying, I'm cool with holding hands. I'm cool with getting a coffee. I'm cool, maybe even kissing you, but like, I'm not cool with anything else. Right. And so if you aren't aligned on that, it gives like perfect clarity, and it gives clarity to people, my daughter and her friends, to say like, listen, this guy's not interested in getting a coffee, right? And so that helps to protect them too. And it helps to protect young, like college girls and whatnot too, and boys, because I think there can be miscommunication on both sides, right? One of the gentlemen in our marketing team, he is a devout Christian and was in a fraternity. And he said, this would have been great because I could have ascertained who like was not interested into the hookup culture, right? Because this also protects people who are not into it, protects people in the hookup culture, but it also protects people who are not
100%
a part of the hookup culture.
Well, and to expand just a little bit more on that though too, I also don't think it's just the hookups. Like when you first meet somebody, a lot of assaults that happen, sexual assaults that happen, are actually from someone you already know.
That's true too.
So it might be a relationship that's starting slow and you want to see how we're going to escalate things. Maybe you have your milestones in your relationship. But I think nowadays that's becoming more prominent. People don't want to just jump into hookup culture immediately as it was. Not to put a bad name on it, but that's just some of what we've been risen with now. Like everyone keeps moving on.
And so many of the Title IXs that I get, believe it or not, are not from like a one night stand.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, most of the time it's somebody you already know. I think there's this myth that it's just like somebody who leaps out from behind the bushes, but in reality, it's somebody you already know. This is somebody that's already like your friend. You're somebody who you've seen out before, you've had conversations with before, somebody you already know. So all of that's really helpful. All right. So Timothy, if our listeners, if they want to try this app, where do they need to go in order to download this thing?
So you can find us in the iOS or the Android App Store.
Okay.
We'll give you the links to do that right now. We also have our social media, so on Instagram, Facebook, and it's the NotME App.
Got it. All right. And what's the cost? What is the cost for this app as well?
Yeah. The cost, the first one's free. Right now, we're running actually 30 days for the month of June for Pride. So you can get 30 days free. Try it out, see what you think of it. There is ID verification in there. Of course, that's an added cost. It's not too substantial, but yeah.
Okay. So there's a cost for the ID verification, but outside of that, it's free to use for the first 30 days.
For the first 30 days.
And the ID verification too, just to kind of put in a little plug. Say you don't want to pay the small cost for the ID verification. The person that you're speaking to can treat you to that cost.
Yes.
So if you're concerned about someone's age and they don't want to ID verify, then you can actually treat for them to be ID verified, which is just another step in trying, to protect people and making sure people are who they say they are.
And we have a red flag built in there. So if somebody denies it and doesn't want to proceed with it, because we have a very prominent third party that does it, it pops up red flag. you might want to investigate this a little bit more.
Yeah.
What's the reason why?
Or not proceed.
Right.
Yeah. And we have a
Yeah.
safe word.
Especially if you're willing to pay for it and they're not complying, then you
Like,
got
why not?
questions like, why
Yeah.
I'm paying for it. Why
Exactly.
wouldn't you do that?
Exactly. And it the $4 that it is significantly cheaper than paying for, a criminal prosecution or
Right,
my
100%.
services under a Title IX or whatnot.
Just life altering.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure those attorney fees that you collect, Nicole, are probably significantly more than $4.
Significantly more. And also after the 30 days, even our monthly rate is less than a chai latte.
Yeah.
Okay.
Give up 1 day of coffee and
Yeah.
you can have, this app for nothing practically.
Seems really affordable, and I think it's solving a real problem on college campuses today in terms of consent and everything that we've talked about here today. So really, really good work. I'm really proud of the work you guys are doing. So Nicolena,
Thank you so
Timothy,
much.
absolutely fantastic. Now you guys you're in the Pittsburgh area, right?
We are.
And I do get to Pittsburgh very often. There's a big conference in the Northeast every year that ends up being in Pittsburgh. So the next time I'm there, where should I go for a great bite to eat?
Okay, so we thought we knew you were going to ask us this. We thought about it, and I'm sure if you've interviewed anybody else, they're going to say Permanis, which is fantastic, right? You got to have the Permani sandwich. However, I am a pizza girl. I am originally from Chicago, so I am a pizza girl, and my absolute favorite is Aiello's Pizza in Squirrel Hill. They are fantastic. I almost need the app in order to be able to eat the pizza. That is how delicious the pizza is.
So is this deep dish or is this thin crust?
No, it's kind of in the middle. It's doughy. It has a
Okay.
beautiful crust. It's not deep dish,
It's
but
not deep dish.
yeah, and it's like those big pieces you get in New York.
Okay.
So,
You gotta fold.
Yeah.
You got to fold it. Okay.
Uh,
All right. So now you're speaking my language. I was worried we're going the Chicago route with the deep dish.
No,
And I'm
that's
like,
trash.
that's good, but it's like a casserole. I can't even put it in the pizza casserole.
No, it's trash. That's not pizza.
That's trash. I agree with
I went
you.
to
I mean,
school
you got to
in
be
New York.
able to fold it.
I know a good piece of pizza, right?
All right. Well, this has been really fun. I really appreciate you guys being with us on the show today. So this has been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for creating the app and putting it out there and talking about it. We will be sure to promote it and make sure that we get you a bunch of downloads. And who knows, maybe we can get some fraternities and sororities to work with you on some kind of campaign where we can really get the message out on particular campuses and just get everybody on the app. And I think it's one of those things that like once we reach that tipping point on a particular campus and everybody has it, then it's like, what do you mean you're not on the app? It's like, it's weird that you're not on the app. And why are you not on the app? Like I'm asking questions now.
Sure.
So
let us know. And when you're in Pittsburgh, we have plenty of swag and we will share said swag with whatever fraternity or sorority would love to work with us. We just want to help people. We really do.
I have some ideas for you. So we'll definitely chat. All right. So this has been fantastic. To all the college students listening, if you learned something today from Nicolena, from Timothy, I want you to share this episode with the entire chapter. Drop a link to this interview in a group chat with your chapter, share it on social media, do whatever you have to do in order to share awareness of this really great app that I think is going to help a lot of college students across the country. And you really never know who needs to hear this message today. So just put it out there and do the right thing. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for being on the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. We'll see everybody on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.